Welcome again in this ECC Education YouTube channel, and today I will discuss about the pulse oximetry and capnography. Analysis of oxygenation is very important during the anesthesia and critical care practice. It can be done by invasive method and non-invasive method. So this arterial blood gas analysis which we are using during our ICU practice, it will give an idea about the following oxygenation indices like partial pressure of oxygen in the arterial blood, saturation of oxygen in the arterial blood, partial pressure of oxygen in the alveolar gas, the alveolar arterial gradient difference, A by A ratio and PI2 by FiO2 ratio. And then pulse oximetry, it is the non-invasive method to assess the oxygenation status of the patient and very cheap to buy, and we have seen the importance of this pulse oximeter during our COVID pandemic. So this is a pulse oximeter, and this pulse oximeter is a medical device that non-invasively monitors the arterial oxygen saturation by spectrophotometry method and by sensing the pulsatile changes of the arterial blood volume. It has the microprocessor which is available in the medical devices, in this medical device, and it is only select the pulsatile signal, not the non-pulsatile signal. Pulse oximetry is the fifth vital sign, and it is based on two technology. One is the spectrophotometry, which measures the oxygen saturation based on the Beer-Lambert law, and then another one is the optical plethysmography that detects the blood volume changes in the microvascular bed of. Following types of the oximetry: one is the transmission pulse oximetry, we will discuss in detail in this class. Then the reflectance pulse oximetry, co-oximetry and transcutaneous oximetry. Now let's see which physical properties used in this pulse oximetry. So let's understand. So here pulse oximetry uses the light to work out the oxygen saturation, and light is emitted from the light source which goes across the pulse oximeter probe and reaches the right detector. If a finger is placed in between the light source and the light detector, the light will now have to pass through the finger to reach the detector, and part of the light will be absorbed by the finger and part is not absorbed and get transmitted and reaches the light detector. Above the finger here, the light source that emits the light, and in the finger is an artery which carries the blood, which has the pulsatile flow, and this area of interest for this pulse oximetry because it only senses the pulsatile signals, and below this is the light detector. Now what Beer's law says? Beer's law says that amount of light absorbed is proportional to the concentration of the light absorbing substances. So here hemoglobin is absorbs the light, and the amount of light absorbed is proportional to the concentration of hemoglobin. So in this diagram, the blood vessels in both figures have the same diameter. However, one blood vessel has a low hemoglobin concentration, look here, and the other blood vessel has a high hemoglobin concentration. So each single hemoglobin absorbs some of the light. So more the hemoglobin per unit area, more is the light is absorbed. So here more the hemoglobin per unit area, so more the light is absorbed. Here less hemoglobin per unit area, so less light is absorbed, and this principle is the Beer's law. Now coming to the Lambert's law, according to the Lambert's law, the amount of light absorbed is proportional to the length of the path that the light has to travel in the absorbing substances. So here the amount of light is absorbed is proportional to the concentration of hemoglobin in the blood vessels. In this diagram, the blood vessel in both figure has the different diameter. Okay, so light emitted from the source has to travel through the artery. So look here is the less distance, here is the more distance. So that the concentration of hemoglobin is same in the both arteries. The light meets more hemoglobin here, meets more hemoglobin in the wider artery compared to here, less hemoglobin in the narrower artery. So longer the path the light has to travel, more is the light absorbed. Now, the pulse oximetry actually uses the property that oxyhemoglobin and deoxyhemoglobin absorbs light of different wavelength in a specific way. This is the graph which showing the absorptions of oxyhemoglobin at different wavelength will look like this. It shows that the oxyhemoglobin does not absorb the same amount of light at different wavelengths. Again notice here, like oxyhemoglobin, the deoxyhemoglobin absorbs different amount of light at different wavelength. So the oxyhemoglobin graph showing that it absorbs more light of the infrared region compared to the red light. So at the 950 nanometer, that is the infrared light zone, it absorbs more compared to the red zone. In the deoxyhemoglobin graph, here it is just opposite. Here the more absorption of the red light compared to the infrared. Hence, oxyhemoglobin absorbs more infrared light, so less transmission of infrared light than the red light. And deoxyhemoglobin absorbs more red light, it means less transmission of red light than infrared light. So two types of light, red light and infrared light used in this. Now, how will calculate it? So, the pulse oximeter work out the oxygen saturation by comparing how much red light and the infrared light is absorbed by the blood. Depending on the amounts of the oxyhemoglobin and the deoxyhemoglobin present, the ratio of red light absorbed compared to the amount of infrared light absorbed changes. Using this ratio, the pulse oximeter can work out the oxygen saturation, and this ratio is analyzed in the computer and then it will display on the. So here, if the patient, so this screen is showing the 100% saturation, the absorption ratio comparing how much red light and infrared light is absorbed will be the same as that seen with the oxyhemoglobin absorption curve that we already discussed in the earlier. At 0%, there is only deoxyhemoglobin. The absorption ratio will therefore the same as that seen with the deoxyhemoglobin graph. Now, look at when the patient has the oxygen saturation of 75%. The blood has both oxyhemoglobin and deoxyhemoglobin. The absorption pattern is now somewhere in between the oxyhemoglobin curve and deoxyhemoglobin curve. The ratio of absorbed red light and infrared light is different, and using this information, the pulse oximetry is able to calculate the oxygen saturation of 75% and same in the 50% in the 25%, but pulse oximeter is not reliable below the 7%. So the absorbance of the light depends on the concentration of the light absorbing substances, length of the light path in the absorbing substances, and the oxyhemoglobin and deoxyhemoglobin absorbs red and infrared light different. Now coming to the pitfalls and limitations, dyshemoglobinopathies like carboxyhemoglobinopathy or methemoglobin, what problem will occur? So the accurate when the oxygen saturation is accurate when the saturation in between the 70 to 100%. Methemoglobin, in case of the methemoglobin, actually the methemoglobin absorbs the equal amount of red and infrared light, and the ratio is equal to 1 at 85% saturation. So even if the patient is hypoxic, the pulse oximeter will read 85% or vice versa. If the true oxygen saturation is 100%, then also the pulse oximetry will the 85%. So in both hypoxic and the true condition, always in case of the methemoglobinemia, the oxygen saturation will display on the screen is 85%. Now coming to the carboxyhemoglobin, what will occur in that condition? If the carboxyhemoglobin is present in the blood of the patient, so it will absorb very little light at the infrared range of the 940 nanometer, while at 660 nanometer it absorbs light very similar to the oxyhemoglobin. Thus, the presence of significance of carboxyhemoglobin will resemble the curve of oxyhemoglobin in the red range and with no effect on the infrared range. So, it looks like oxyhemoglobin and causing the pulse oximeter to overread. Now, poor perfusion. Poor perfusion leads to the poor arterial pulse waveform, and so the pulse oximeter fails to detect the correct oxygen saturation. And this can happen in case of the cardiopulmonary bypass, cold extremities, hypovolemia, low cardiac output, peripheral arrhythmias. The pulse oximeter may not be able to detect the correct saturation during the rapid atrial fibrillation or during the intra-aortic balloon pump application. In case of the black, blue and green nail polishes, it will give the lower saturation. Presence of vital dyes like the methylene blue, indocyanine green fluorescence can give the also low. Shivering and seizure will not give the accurate readings. The hyperemic limb may show the lower reading as capillary and venous flow becomes pulsatile, and it cannot detect the hypoventilation or hypercarbia despite the good saturation. Now next one is the hemodynamic assessment we can done by using the pulse oximetry, and one of the variable is the perfusion index, which is derived from the plethysmograph waveform. And this perfusion index is defined as it is the ratio of pulsatile blood flow to the non-pulsatile or static blood in the peripheral tissue. Low PI suggests peripheral vasoconstriction or severe hypovolemia, and high PI suggests the vasodilation. This perfusion index represents a non-invasive measure of peripheral perfusion that can be continuously or non-invasively obtained from a pulse. This is a very important indices, that is the plethysmographic variability index, and if this index is more than 40%, it means patient is fluid responsiveness. And how will it calculate? It calculate on the basis of this formula. The PVI is equal to PI max minus PI mean divided by PI max into the 100%, and if it will more than 40%, it means patient is fluid responsiveness and the fluid patient. The another thing we can assess on the basis of this pulse oximetry, that is the cardiac output, and that is non-invasive method of the measurement of the cardiac output, estimated continuous cardiac output. It is a new technology which determine the cardiac output by using the pulse wave transit time, and which is obtained by the pulse oximetry and ECG signals from each cycle of the ECG and peripheral pulse wave. It is the real time, continuous and non-invasive method of the cardiac output measurement. Now, after the transmission pulse oximetry method, now we will discuss about the reflectance pulse oximetry. And in this condition, the probe has light emitting diode and the photodetector both placed next to each other. And the intensity of light waves that are reflected back from the underlying arteries is used to determine the SpO2. It can be used at diverse measurement sites like the feet, forehead, chest and wrist. The venous oximetry is also based on this reflectance pulse oximetry, and it is same principle. It has the specialized oximetry catheter that can monitor the oxygen saturation of hemoglobin in the SVC and pulmonary artery, the mixed venous oxygen saturation. And one of the site of this reflectance oximetry is the forehead. So what are the advantage of this site? This arterial circulation in the forehead is less prone to the vasoconstriction than the digital artery in the fingers. Therefore, SpO2 recording are not compromised by the vasoconstriction. Now coming to the coaximetry. Coaximetry and total number of wavelength of light is 4. Technique: the arterial blood sample is inserted into the machine. It will measure the oxyhemoglobin, unbound hemoglobin, carboxyhemoglobin, methemoglobin, hemoglobin content. What are the advantages? It is highly accurate and it can distinguish from carboxyhemoglobin from the oxyhemoglobin. but it has certain disadvantages like require the arterial sample, expensive, very much expensive, and fetal hemoglobin interferes with SO2. Now coming to the transcutaneous oximetry, transcutaneous oxygen measurement is a non-invasive method of measuring the oxygen level of the tissue below the skin. Since oxygen is carried by the blood, it can be used as an indirect measure of blood flow to the tissue. And since blood flow is very important for the wound healing, so this method is often used to gauge the ability of tissue to effectively heal. Now after the pulse oximeter, we will discuss about the capnography. So capnography is the graphic display of the instantaneous CO2 concentration versus time, that is the time capnograph, or expired volume during a respiratory cycle. This is a volume capnograph. The infrared absorption photometry. So now this is based on the principle of infrared rays. Why infrared rays? Because infrared rays absorb will help only where the two or more dissimilar item is available, like carbon dioxide, nitrous oxide, isoflurane, and in the selective wavelength, that is the 4.25 micrometer. Why? Because if I already said the infrared rays can be absorbed by the carbon dioxide or nitrous oxide or isoflurane. So in the nitrous oxide, if the during the anesthesia we are giving the nitrous oxide also, so this infrared rays is also absorbed by the nitrous oxide, but the wavelength is different. The wavelength for the nitrous oxide is 4.50 micrometers. For the CO2 it is the 4.25 micrometers. So very specific wavelength we have to use in the capnogram. And the other principle is the Beer-Lambert law. Like we already discussed about this during the pulse oximetry. The same principle is here also. So what the Beer's law says, the amount of infrared rays absorbed is proportional to the concentration of the infrared absorbing substances. So in the above diagram we can see here is the less carbon dioxide molecule, here is the more carbon dioxide molecule. So because of the less molecule, less absorption, more transmission. Because of the more molecule, dense molecule, so more absorption and less transmission. Now coming to the basic analyzer system. So the light source, that is the infrared rays, this one is the light. The basic analyzer system consists of the infrared source. Okay, this one is the sample chamber, this is the detector, and this one is the display. The CO2 being measured goes by the sampling chamber. Okay, that has a fixed size, it has a fixed size. Not all the materials allow the infrared waves to pass through, therefore the chamber, this chamber is made of a special material, and that is a sapphire. The detector outputs a signal that is proportional to the amount of infrared waves falling on it. So more the CO2 in the sample chamber causes more infrared to be absorbed and less reaches the detector. Less CO2 in the sample chamber causes less infrared to be absorbed and more reaches the detector. So if the patient has low CO2, more infrared reaching the detector, low CO2 display. High CO2, less infrared reaching the detector, high CO2 display. Now coming to the types of capnograph. So mainstream capnograph and the side stream capnograph. So capnograph in the mainstream analyzer, the analyzer is directly near the CO2 expired by the patient. The mainstream analyzer is attached to the patient and the analyzer is connected to the monitor by the long electrical wires. In the side stream analyzers, the analyzer is away from the CO2 expired from the patient, and a long narrow tube is connected to the patient end. Okay, a pump that keeps suctioning a small quantity, that is 50 to 150 ml per minute of the patient respiratory gases, and this sample of gases allows across the analyzer which is located away from the patient. Unfortunately, the suction tubing does not only suck the CO2, it also sucks in expensive anesthetic gases. To avoid the wastage of expensive anesthetic agent, the sampled gas is returned, this green line showing that, to the patient anesthetic. This one is the breathing system to the patient anesthetic. So now coming to the advantage and disadvantage of this mainstream and side stream analyzers. So mainstream analyzer waveform comes in the real time. No gas is removed from the circuit. No sampling tube issues. Sensors are heavy, may cause the circuit disconnection. It can cause the facial burns. It cannot be used in the non-intubated patient or in case of the prone position. The side stream, it is very easy to connect, minimal dead space and lightweight, can be easily used in the awake patient. Waveform is delayed, that is a disadvantage. Sampling tube obstruction can occur, and water vapor changes affect the CO2. Now coming to the phases of the capnograph. So phase 1 is a dead space ventilation, represents the beginning of exhalation where the dead space is cleared from the upper airway. Phase 2 is the ascending phase, represents the rapid rise in CO2 concentration in the breath system as the CO2 from the alveoli reaches the upper airway. Phase 3 alveolar phase represents the CO2 concentration reaching a uniform level in the entire breath stream from the alveolus to the nose, and this point represents the maximum CO2 concentration at the end of the tidal breath, that is the EtCO2. And now coming to the phase 0, the descending phase or inspiratory limb represents the inhale. Now coming to the clinical application of capnography. So it will help to verify the endotracheal tube placement, continuous monitoring of tube location during the patient transport. It will help to assess the effectiveness of the resuscitation and prognostication during the cardiac arrest. It is an indicator of return of spontaneous circulation during the chest compression. It will help to titrate the end-tidal CO2 in patient with the increased ICP, because if the CO2 is high, there is increased cerebral blood flow and that will lead to increased ICP and then finally the herniation. It will help to determine the adequacy of ventilation and also helpful to determine the inadequate tube block or discharge. Now, this capnogram we can see in case of the normal control ventilation patient. It can see in case of the normal spontaneous ventilation patient. In case of the COPD patient or asthma or ET tube block, if there is slanting, this one is the slanting and prolongation of the expiratory phase, that will indicate the obstruction in the respiratory pathway. It is either due to the obstruction in the endotracheal tube or obstructive lung disease like COPD and asthma. And cardiac oscillation, it is due to the contraction relaxation. This Curare cleft, it can be seen in when the patient is paralyzed, but the relaxation effect is gone, and because of the spontaneous effect, this Curare cleft is present. In case of the esophageal intubation, there is no capnograph. Exhausted CO2 absorber, in that condition, there is elevation in the baseline, that is indicative of the rebreathing or insufficient gas flow. This capnogram showing the contamination of the expired sample by the fresh gas flow or sampling site too near to the fresh gas. Here capnogram showing the low EtCO2, that indicates the hyperventilation, and here the high EtCO2 indicates the hypoventilation. And this one is showing the sudden fall in the EtCO2 due to the asystole, hypotension or massive pulmonary embolism. This capnogram showing the sudden rise in CO2 after unclamping a major blood vessel or release of tourniquet. This capnogram showing the sudden fall and rise of EtCO2 is due to the small air embolus, and this capnogram showing the oscillation due to the contraction and relaxation. No, this one is the due to the return of the spontaneous circulation. Now coming to the volumetric capnography, this technique mainly helpful to evaluate the expired CO2, and it is plotted against the exhaled lung volume, allow the precise measurement of the physiological and alveolar dead space both. breath to breath basis at the bedside. So it will help to quantify the global VQ mismatch, that is very important for the critically ill patient or ICU patient. It allows the separation of components such as whether it is true dead space on the alveolar side or shunt on the capillary side. It has the diagnostic, prognostic and therapeutic implication. In the ICU, dead space measurement can be used to guide therapy for patient with ARDS. In the emergency department, it can guide the thrombolytic therapy for pulmonary embolism, and the perioperative patient, it can indicate the success of equipment management. So with this, I am ending my presentation with this final word. Both dual oximetry, that is pulse oximetry and central venous oximetry, and in-tidal PCO2 monitoring can be useful for evaluating the adequacy of cardiac output and for detecting changes in the cardiac output. Capnogram is a very useful tool for the ventilated patient, and it gives us a real-time idea of various lung interactions that can have the implication on the outcome of the patient. So